On the first day of my rebirth, the ice-cold school beauty suddenly snapped, under the watchful eyes of the entire crowd. She frantically pressed her lips against mine. The whole class was paralyzed in shock. The teacher at the podium, even more stunned, hurled a piece of chalk at her head. But with bloodshot eyes, she cried, "Stop liking my sister. Love me instead." As it turns out, she had been reborn too. In my past life, my childhood sweetheart and I went from school uniforms to wedding veils. 2 months before the wedding, while I was still blissfully immersed in the happy bubble of marrying the one I loved most, my best friend Xie Huaijin suddenly approached me. He showed me screenshots of his chat history with Su Xinyao. The record spanned from 2020 to 2022. From a formal, distant greeting, "Hello, I'm Guyu's girlfriend. I want your help preparing a birthday surprise for him," to a passionate declaration, "Huaijin, I love you. But I feel a sense of responsibility toward Guyu, so we shouldn't see each other anymore." For 2 years without my knowledge, the distance between her and Xie Huaijin had shifted from a vast canyon to zero intimacy. I stared at those screenshots in utter disbelief. As the air was sucked out of my lungs, I heard Xie Huaijin whisper in my ear, "She and I have been together for a long time. Marrying you is nothing more than pity for your parents' tragic death." Then my supposed best friend used a pleading tone to utter the most disgusting words on earth. "For the sake of our best friendship, I'm begging you, just let me have her." In an instant, I plummeted from the heights of heaven straight into the darkest abyss. I shredded every single photo I had with Xie Huaijin. I smashed every gift Xie Huaijin had ever given me. I refused to break up with Su Xinyao. I insisted on going through with the wedding. Consequently, on the eve of the ceremony, I received a final message from Xie Huaijin: "If you marry her, I'll jump off the roof of the wedding hotel." I ignored it completely. I didn't believe a shameless, self-serving traitor like Xie Huaijin would actually commit suicide. But the following day, he actually leaped. From that moment on, Xie Huaijin became the eternal indelible. White moonlight in her heart, she kept many surrogates, each one a carbon copy of him, while I became the person she loathed the most. In the 3rd year of our marriage, I was still foolishly hoping she'd return to our family one day, until I was diagnosed with terminal cancer. The doctor told me not to leave any regrets in my final days. Suddenly I had an epiphany. I refused to die as her husband. I wanted to be myself again. So when she demanded a divorce for the umpteenth time, I actually agreed. "Weren't you dying for a divorce? Do 3 things with me over these next 7 days and we're done." Without waiting for Su Xinyao's response, I continued, "First come with me to visit my parents." This was a vow she made back when she first confessed to me. Back then she promised that after our wedding, we would return every year to see my parents and tell them just how happy we were. She clearly recalled those words. Her gaze turned icy and mocking. "Using your dead parents for this circus? How revolting." She assumed this was just another one of my ploys to win her back. Su Xinyao curled her lip and said indifferently, "And the second thing?" I forced a faint smile. "Second, I want 100,000 yuan. Su Xinyao scoffed, looking at me with disdain. "Only 100,000? She pulled out a card. "There's 500,000 in here. Is that enough?" As I reached for it, she gripped the card tightly. "I hope this 500,000 buys out every single connection left between us." I felt nothing but the freezing plastic of the card, chilling me to my very soul. My voice was raspy. "It will. It definitely will." Because this was the money she had promised to use for buying my burial plot. Once long ago, I watched an elderly, silver-haired couple on the street, supporting each other as they walked along. I sighed to Su Xinyao tell me, "When we reach that age, will we still be together?" Su Xinyao clasped my hand. "Of course we will. I promise to stay by your side for a lifetime. I'll never break my word." I teased him, "Then what if I end up dying before you do?" He replied, "Then I'll purchase a double burial plot. You wait for me down there while I settle things up here, and then I'll come to join you." Now I am truly facing death. I want him to fulfill the vow he once swore to me. After he departed, I dialed the cemetery's number. "Hello? I'd like to select a burial plot. I've made this phone call twice before in my life. The first time was for my parents. The second was for my unborn child. This is the 3rd time I am making this call. But this time it's for myself. I've buried every single one of my loved ones with my own hands. In the end, our family will finally be reunited." On the 6th day, I revealed the final request. "Accompany me to one last place." 5 years since our college graduation, this was the first time Su Xinyao and I returned to our alma mater. I gazed up at the school's massive banyan tree. 7 years ago, this is exactly where you officially confessed your love to me. The leaves rustled in the wind with a haunting whisper. The scene before my eyes felt like it was rewinding 7 years. I was standing beneath this very tree, with Su Xinyao standing right in front of me. He spoke with such sincerity. "I like you. I will love you forever and ever." I doubt even he could have imagined, that his version of forever would be so tragically short. Su Xinyao's gaze darkened. "You brought me here just to dwell on the past? Tomorrow is the final day. Are you regretting your promise to sign the divorce?" I retracted my gaze. "I'm well aware tomorrow is the end. I wasn't trying to win him back, nor would I ever feel regret." I stated calmly, "I'm not here to beg you to stay. I'm here to bid farewell to the Su Xinyao I once knew." I turned to look at him. I once loved you with every fiber of my being, more than I loved my own life. But now, I don't love you anymore, and I will never love you again. Su Xinyao stared blankly at me, my eyes bloodshot and raw. At this very moment, I am finally letting go. He clearly should have been overjoyed, yet his heart felt absolutely no sense of relief. He clenched his fist about to speak, when a voice suddenly drifted from behind. Is that you two? I hurriedly brushed away my tears, only to realize the newcomer was our old college class monitor. The monitor stepped forward with a beaming grin. Oh man, it's been ages. I was actually just about to give you guys a phone call to invite the campus's power couple to our class reunion. I took a slow step forward. Su Xinyao instantly snapped out of her previous mood, assuming I was about to start another dramatic performance. Just as she was about to cut me off, she saw me flash a faint calm smile at the monitor. Actually, we're on our way to get a divorce right now. Su Xinyao froze on the spot as the monitor gasped in horror. What? You guys are getting a divorce? You loved her so much, you literally gave Su Xinyao a liver transplant. How could you possibly want to divorce her now? I remained silent, but before I could utter a word, Su Xinyao frowned deeply. 2 years ago, the person who donated their liver to me was Huai Jin. What does that have to do with Guyu? Now it was my turn to be completely stunned. I stared blankly at Su Xinyao. In a flash of realization, everything clicked into place, and I suddenly burst into laughter. 5 years ago, when her liver failed, I had donated 60% of my own liver to save her. To prevent Su Xinyao from stopping me, I lied and said I was going abroad on a business trip, leaving Xie Huajin to look after her for 3 months. I never would have imagined that Su Xinyao actually believed Xie Huajin was her savior. No wonder in the time that followed, Su Xinyao became so obsessively protective over Xie Huajin's health. No wonder the entire vibe between them shifted after those 3 months. And here I was thinking the two people I loved most had finally found harmony. As it turns out, Su Xinyao simply had the wrong man. I looked at Su Xinyao's icy judgmental expression, laughing until my eyes grew moist. I was suddenly dying to know what kind of face she'd make once she finally learned the absolute truth. Unfortunately, I won't be around to witness it. I calmly turned to Su Xinyao and said, let's go finish the divorce. We walked toward the school gates, where her new boyfriend Palin was waiting in his car. You mentioned getting a divorce, so I brought my ID along immediately. He sauntered over and draped his arm around Su Xinyao, smirking as he spoke, it seems.
And once again, I failed to show up.
To think he'd actually initiate the divorce himself. I guess true love really does conquer all. I let out a hollow, sharp chuckle. Indeed, love conquers everything. But people change, and love is just as fickle. Pate. Lin's face darkened instantly. Are you implying she'll betray me too? I offered no reply. As we entered the car, Palin caught my silhouette in the mirror and suddenly spoke up. Mind if I take the wheel today? Su Xinyao gave a silent nod and slid into the passenger seat. All throughout the ride, I gripped our marriage certificate tight. Suddenly, the vehicle lurched with a violent shudder. Palin's voice erupted in pure unadulterated panic. What do I do? The brakes are completely shot. I've lost total control of the speed. Shock and adrenaline surged through me all at once. We were on a collision course with the freight truck ahead. Su Xinyao lunged for the steering wheel, jerking it hard, veering the car straight toward the guardrail. In the final split second, she reached out to shield Palin in her arms. Then came a deafening, bone-rattling crash. My body was hurled forward completely at the mercy of the impact. By the time I drifted back into consciousness, I realized I was hopelessly pinned between the mangled seats. In the front, Su Xinyao was frantically kicking the door open, dragging an unconscious Palin out to safety. She didn't spare me a single glance as she turned to leave. Wait, don't go! I cried out in desperation. Get me out of here. We have to finalize the divorce today, no matter what. I could feel it with agonizing clarity. Something heavy was crushing my stomach. The excruciating pain was the only thing keeping me awake. I'm dying. But I refused to be tethered to her for all eternity. I was practically begging her, please, I'm begging you, save me. Su Xinyao merely responded with a cold, derisive sneer. She looked down at me, still using the divorce to threaten me. If you want to live, crawl out yourself. With that, she supported Palin and walked away without looking back. I choked out one last feeble cry, only for Su Xinyao to be answered by me coughing up a mouthful of gore. It felt as though every drop of life in my veins was draining away. Blood bubbled and surged from the corners of my mouth. Suddenly, a chorus of voices echoed in my ears. There was my mother, Ah Yu. Wake up, you'll be late if you don't get out of bed now. There was my father, Ah Yu. Dad caught a massive fish with Uncle Zhang today. I'll braise it for my precious son tonight. There was even Xie Huajin, Ah Yu. Let's hit the convenience store. I'll buy you your favorite chocolate ice cream. A faint, gentle smile tugged at my lips. Wait for me. The cacophony in my ears slowly faded. I gradually let my eyes drift shut. From the heavens, rain began to fall drop by drop. At the hospital, Su Xinyao delivered Palin to a bed and immediately turned to leave. Palin, however, grabbed her hand and grumbled, Didn't you already call the police? Are you seriously still worried if Guyu lives or dies? The moment those words left his mouth, he was met with Su Xinyao's glacial, piercing stare. He quickly pivoted to acting frail. I was so scared in the crash. Can't you just stay here and comfort me? Su Xinyao pursed her lips, remaining silent for a beat, before brushing off Palin's hand and walking out. I'll be back soon. She opened the door and stepped into the lobby, where the shrill, ear-splitting scream of an ambulance siren pierced through her. Patient has massive blood loss, already in shock, prep for transfusion. Su Xinyao's heart skipped a beat. Guyu's blood type is... She instantly shook the thought away. No, it can't be him. I clearly saw that he was just pinned and unable to move. How could there be such critical blood loss? She quickened her pace toward the exit, by pure chance. A doctor rushed a gurney through the entrance, while another medic was perched on top of the cart, frantically performing CPR on the victim. A team of medical staff swarmed toward them. Su Xinyao couldn't see the victim's face on the gurney. Her footsteps faltered for a second. At the moment they brushed past each other, she heard the ER doctor screaming at the top of his lungs. Why did the heart suddenly stop? Switch out, someone else take over. Administer more epinephrine now. Su Xinyao retracted her gaze and walked toward the hospital gates. Unnoticed, the sky had opened up into a torrential downpour. She stood frozen before the wall of rain. He dismissed the doctor and messaged his assistant to bring the car around immediately. The moment the text sent, his phone began to vibrate. He answered impatiently, I said bring the car. But before he could finish, a voice heavy with suppressed sorrow pierced through his eardrums with clinical clarity. Excuse me, am I speaking to Mr. Guyu's wife? Su Xinyao's grip tightened instinctively. What's wrong? The voice on the other end came again, heavy with regret. I'm so sorry. Mr. Guyu, due to massive hemorrhaging from the accident, has just passed away after unsuccessful resuscitation. Amidst the relentless drumming rain, the voice in the receiver felt like a ghost whispering in his ear. Su Xinyao stood frozen like a statue. Suddenly, he spun around and sprinted back inside. The gurney was already being wheeled slowly toward the morgue. The ER doctor's somber voice continued to echo through the phone. He stared at the figure lying on the gurney, that broken body drenched in dark crimson stains. His legs suddenly turned to lead, rooting him to the spot. He didn't dare take another step. Is that person... Guyu. How could that possibly be him? He had checked so meticulously before leaving. It was just minor abrasions. How could he be dead? He only wanted to teach Guyu a lesson. He wasn't supposed to actually die. The doctor's voice kept calling through the line. Hello, are you Mr. Guyu's wife? Please come to the hospital to identify and claim Mr. Guyu's remains. Su Xinyao stared unblinkingly at the doctor standing by the bed. The movement of the doctor's lips synced perfectly with the voice coming from his phone. Su Xinyao's mind erupted into a chaotic roaring static. He lunged forward with sudden desperate speed, as if driven to verify a nightmare. Ignoring the doctor's startled gaze, he reached out and ripped back the stark white sheet. Outside, the leaves thrashed violently against the storm. The morgue's flickering overhead lights were dizzying. 1 second a blinding clinical white, the next a deep shadowy abyss. But despite the strobe, he saw it clearly. Lying there on the cold steel ashen face and drained of every spark of life was no one else but me. Su Xinyao recoiled, stumbling backward in a daze. It was Guyu. It was truly undeniably Guyu. In that instant, a crushing suffocation gripped his chest as if his very breath had ceased. Everything in his vision seemed to freeze into a slow-motion frame while the surrounding cacophony amplified 1,000-fold, boring into his eardrums bit by bit. He glared deathly at my pale face, suddenly lunging forward to grab my shoulders. Guyu dropped the act. First you fake being sick, and now you're faking your death. Weren't you the one begging for a divorce? Get up right now and let's go sign those damn papers. Security guards rushed in, prying him away by force. Miss, please, you need to calm down. He bellowed at the top of his lungs. I am perfectly calm. Let go of me, Su Xinyao thrashed toward me. But the guard stood like a fortress before him, allowing the doctors to prepare my body for the morgue freezer. He reached out his hand, yet he couldn't grasp even a shadow of me. I was right there, right in front of his eyes, standing so close. Yet it felt like an infinite, unbridgeable chasm had opened, the distance of an entire world between us. He could only watch helplessly as I was slowly sealed away into the icy darkness of the locker, utterly powerless to stop it. The doctor looked at his state and let out a heavy sigh. The deceased is gone. Don't drown yourself in grief. Su Xinyao replied with an icy jagged edge. Grief. I'm not grieving in the slightest. I'm just disappointed he didn't live long enough to suffer his punishment. The doctor stared deeply into his face. Is that so? Then why are you crying? Su Xinyao froze. He reached up to touch his face, finding it drenched and freezing. He was weeping. How was that possible? How could he possibly shed a tear for this man? He was supposed to loathe me, to want me to pay with my life for Jie Huajin. Su Xinyao stared blankly at his own damp hand. The doctor signaled the guards to release him. Miss, we responded to the emergency call you placed, and rushed to the crash site. But when we arrived, you were nowhere to be found. Su Xinyao's pupils contracted violently. The image of my desperate plea for help suddenly flashed in his mind. His heart throbbed with a searing, agonizing pain. He clenched his fingers tight, only for the doctor to state matter-of-factly, I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. Even if you had rushed him to the hospital immediately, he wouldn't have lasted much longer anyway. Su Xinyao froze. What do you mean by that? The doctor let out a heavy sigh. The deceased was already in the terminal stages of stomach cancer. Moreover, he was missing 60% of his liver. He wouldn't have survived past tomorrow regardless. Su Xinyao's breath hitched in a sharp sudden gasp. 60% of his liver? A chilling realization seeped into his heart. His voice trembled as he asked, When did this happen? As if to confirm his worst nightmare. The doctor replied 5 years ago. Su Xinyao stumbled back, his world spinning. 5 years ago? How was that even possible? 5 years ago, during his transplant, he was terrified I'd worry. So he kept the entire thing a secret from me. Which meant when he underwent that surgery, I wasn't even in the country. I was away on a business trip abroad. By the time he woke up from the operation, the only person by his bedside was Zie Huaijin. Initially, he treated Zie Huaijin with nothing but polite gratitude. But Zie Huaijin's health seemed so fragile. He was constantly pale and fainting from anemia. Until finally, when Zie Huaijin collapsed before him once again, he demanded to know the truth behind his condition. And that's when Zie Huaijin dropped the bombshell. He claimed he had donated 60% of his liver to him. He was paralyzed with shock on the spot. Zie Huaijin had smiled at him and said, if you hadn't asked, I never would have told you. Just consider it a random act of kindness from a stranger. I don't want anything in return from you. Seeing you and Ayu happy is more than enough for me. At that moment, a soul-crushing weight of guilt burned itself deep into the core of his heart. From that day on, he began obsessing over Zie Huaijin, monitoring his health every single second. He began to memorize every little preference, storing them carefully in his mind. He convinced himself it was just a way to repay the debt. But once someone occupies a space in your heart, be it through guilt or something else, falling for them becomes dangerously easy. For 3 years, every time he touched that surgical scar nestled beneath his ribs, he yearned for Zie Huaijin a little more, and loathed me even deeper. But now he's told that Zie Huaijin had played him for a fool from the very start, that he had been dead wrong from the beginning. A violent, agonizing spasm gripped Su Xinyao's heart, as if a pair of freezing, jagged shears were slowly snipping it apart piece by piece. Every shredded fragment was dripping with fresh blood. He suddenly spun around and stormed out, dialing his assistant's number with trembling hands. Investigate something for me immediately. Who was the actual donor for my liver transplant 5 years ago? The assistant worked with terrifying efficiency. A mere hour later, the official transplant records were delivered to the hospital. Su Xinyao stared at the donor's signature column, at the name Gu Yu, and his entire body turned into a pillar of ice. He lunged back toward the morgue, shoving past security to rip open the freezer drawer, only to find my body was already gone. He glared coldly at the guards and doctors behind him. Where is he? Where is Gu Yu? A guard replied, the deceased arranged a cremation service beforehand. The workers from the crematorium were just here and have already taken his body away. Su Xinyao pursed his lips, ripped open the assistant's car door, and charged headlong into the torrential storm. The rain hammered against the car like a barrage of bullets. There were 3 crematoriums in the area, but he knew exactly where I would be. The same place where I had personally seen my parents and our unborn child turn to ash. Su Xinyao's eyes were a chaotic map of bloodshot veins. His mind was flooded with a million questions, riddled with a million impossible uncertainties. He just needed to see the scar under my ribs, the twin of the one he carried, and everything would become crystal clear. All the questions would finally have their answers. He slammed the accelerator to the floor. In the middle of the downpour, his car was the only blur of speed. Finally, he skidded to a halt at the crematorium. He burst through the doors. Just as the staff member pressed the ignition button, Su Xinyao lunged forward like a madman. No stop, the workers frantically held him back, forcing him to watch helplessly. Inside the furnace, the flames erupted into a raging inferno, and as they roared, it felt as though his very soul was being incinerated along with me. So close, once again he was just a split second too late. Just like at the hospital, he missed the mark by a hair, passing me by like a ghost in the corridor. If only he had been just a fraction faster, he could have seen me one last time. Su Xinyao staggered backward, his world spinning. The assistant finally caught up, gasping for air, and thrust a USB drive into his trembling hand. Director Su, we just uncovered something else. 3 years ago, after Mr. Gu received that text from Mr. Xie, he actually went to find him immediately. Su Xinyao froze. What are you talking about? 3 years ago, back when his hatred for me was at its peak, I had actually tried to explain the truth to him. I told him that I had confronted Zie Huaijin. I told him that Zie Huaijin never had any intention of jumping. I told him that everything out of Zie Huaijin's mouth was a lie. But he had watched Zie Huaijin plummet to his death with his own eyes. How could he have ever believed me? He trusted his own sight above all else. Could even his own eyes have betrayed him? 3 years ago, the hotel manager claimed the rooftop CCTV was broken. But I just dug deeper and found that the footage was never actually lost. The assistant glanced nervously at Su Xinyao's ashen face, hesitating for a painful moment. And the truth, it's the polar opposite of what we believed. Carefully, the assistant pulled out a phone, buffered the video, and handed it over to Su Xinyao. Director Su, Do you really want to see this? Su Xinyao snatched the device, his thumb hovering over the pause icon on the screen. He knew he should press play instantly, yet he found himself utterly devoid of the courage to do so. If he had truly misunderstood everything, if the reality matched the desperate explanation I had given, what was he supposed to do then? A suffocating pressure tightened around Su Xinyao's chest. After an eternity, his finger finally tapped the screen. In the grainy surveillance footage, Xie Huaijin stood precariously by the rooftop railing, glaring at me as I stood before him in my wedding suit. I'm begging you one last time. Give Su Xinyao up to me, okay? I remained silent for a long beat. Before answering calmly if he wants to call off the wedding, I won't crawl back to him. Xie Huaijin screamed at the top of his lungs. But he doesn't want to be shackled to you by your tragic sob story anymore. He'll never abandon you on his own. Only if you cancel the wedding will this finally end. I gritted my teeth and retorted. But haven't you used our friendship to shackle me as well? You knew damn well she was my girlfriend, the person I loved most in this world. Yet you made a move on her anyway, didn't you? I turned my back to leave. To be honest, I don't believe for a second you'll jump. If you're going to do it, just do it already. Su Xinyao's fingers tightened around the phone. When she heard Xie Huaijin was going to jump, she had overheard those exact words while rushing to the scene. That was the catalyst for her bone-deep hatred toward me. Those words did indeed come from my mouth, acting as the final straw that supposedly pushed Xie Huaijin over. In her eyes, I was still the one who murdered him. Su Xinyao's heart was a chaotic mess of emotions. She didn't want to witness the moment Xie Huaijin fell, and was about to pull the phone away when, at that exact second, she saw Xie Huaijin smugly waving his device. You're right. I actually had zero intention of jumping. I just needed to record you saying that. I just sent that audio clip to Su Xinyao. I don't need you to call off the wedding anymore. There's no way in hell she'll marry you now. Su Xinyao was completely paralyzed. She stared in utter disbelief at the video, watching Xie Huaijin's gloating, triumphant expression. He really didn't plan to jump. He had deliberately baited her with that recording. The very second the recording was sent in the video, she had called Xie Huaijin's phone. She must have been beyond frantic at that moment. But Xie Huaijin just held the phone up like a trophy. She's definitely racing over here right now, isn't she? Once she hears what you said, and I stage it to look like you pushed me off this ledge, don't you think she'll despise you for the rest of her life? My fists were clenched white. Do you think she's an idiot who would believe such a pathetic lie? Xie Huaijin stood up slowly. That's why I have to make it look much more real. He stood precariously atop the security railing. I've already had someone arrange a buffer down below. Even if I fall, it'll just be a few non-lethal injuries. Trading a bit of pain to steal Su Xinyao away. That's a hell of a bargain. Su Xinyao's breathing abruptly hitched. She felt the blood in her veins turn to ice, completely freezing her soul. Suddenly, she understood exactly what the buffer Xie Huaijin mentioned was. It was those heavy-duty tarps. 3 years ago, on our wedding day, when she arrived at the hotel, she noticed 18 layers of sunshade tarps installed downstairs. She deemed them a safety violation, so she contacted the manager to have them dismantled immediately. Su Xinyao's mouth hung open in agonizing disbelief, her mind spinning into absolute chaos. The video footage continued to play. I clearly knew that the 18 layers downstairs had just been ripped down by her orders. Out of the 17 below, only the topmost layer remained. Xie Huaijin was under the delusion that all 18 were still there, watching Xie Huaijin lean back toward the void. I frantically screamed, "The buffers are gone!" Don't jump, but before the warning could land, the rooftop door slammed open with a violent bang. Su Xinyao burst through as Xie Huaijin tilted backward. Xie Huaijin plummeted, falling 31 stories right before her very eyes. Su Xinyao stared blankly at the glowing screen, her tears splashing uncontrollably against the glass. She saw the version of me in the video, let out a horrified shriek, scrambling desperately toward the edge of the railing. But she violently shoved me aside. "Get away from me!" With bloodshot eyes, I shook my head. He said he wouldn't jump. He said this was all a setup, please believe me. Just believe me, this one time. The Su Xinyao in the video just glared at me with crimson, murderous eyes. Gu Yu, I will never ever let you get away with this. The surveillance footage cut to black at that exact second. The assistant cautiously took the phone back. I verified everything. Back then, the reason this footage went missing was because Xie Huaijin cut a deal with the hotel manager to lie and say the cameras were broken. The manager was eventually fired and the backup was finally recovered. But he fell silent, unable to finish the thought. But back when I tried to explain it all to Su Xinyao, she refused to listen. Now that I'm dead, uncovering the truth is utterly meaningless. Su Xinyao sat motionless on the bench like a hollow shell. What kind of deal did Xie Huaijin strike with the hotel manager? The assistant hesitated for a heartbeat. That kind of transaction. Su Xinyao bit her lip until it bled, slowly covering her eyes with both hands. A tidal wave of emotion surged within her, drowning her in an instant. She suddenly flashed back to 3 years ago, her hands clamped tightly around my throat, as she spat out those heartless, cruel words. She wanted me to suffer the same agony Xie Huaijin felt before he died, to force me to experience that exact same torment. So, on the day she left, as I chased her car down the road, She saw me. She saw me get struck down by that vehicle. She saw the unnatural amount of blood pooling beneath me. Yet she never stopped. She just watched with cold eyes as my child vanished forever into the ruins of this farce. She had succeeded truly. She made sure I lived a life worse than death for these 3 years. Su Xinyao pressed her hands against her eyes, but tears still leaked through the gaps in her fingers. Outside, the rain continued its relentless rhythmic drumming. After what felt like an eternity, the staff member emerged carrying the funerary urn. Su Xinyao reached out to take it, but the worker stepped back, blocking her path. I'm sorry. Mr. Guyu left strict instructions before he passed. His ashes are to be buried in secret by a designated person. No one else is permitted to know the location. Su Xinyao's fingers trembled. When did he say this? The staff member replied, 3 days ago. The very day we returned from visiting my parents' graves. From that moment on, I had been meticulously preparing for my own end, and yet she remained utterly oblivious. Su Xinyao's heart spasmed so violently she could barely draw breath. She choked out, I am his wife. Even I am not allowed. The worker gave her a long, hard look. You're his wife. My apologies, but no, it's forbidden. However, he did leave one final message for me to relay to you. Don't you dare come to his grave to weep, lest you defile his path to reincarnation. Su Xinyao staggered back as if struck. She watched helplessly as the worker carried me away piece by piece out of her life forever. The storm outside raged on seemingly eternal, while her phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Pei Lin. Su Xinyao didn't answer a single one of them. Drenched to the bone, he returned to the house we once shared. The home he once refused to acknowledge. The place where he had pledged to me that we would spend our entire lives together, yet it felt as though we hadn't spent a single day in true harmony. 3 years ago, he abandoned this place, leaving me to guard it in solitude for 3 whole years. Now that he has finally returned, I am gone forever. He walked into the bedroom. Everything was pristine, no different from the day I departed. Only that box lay discarded carelessly on the floor, completely emptied of its contents. Su Xinyao picked up the box, only to suddenly discover a hidden compartment tucked beneath the bottom. He opened it to find a letter lying there in silence. To the future Su Xinyao. Su Xinyao's pupils shook violently. It was from 7 years ago, when he and I promised to write letters to our future selves. He still remembered. Back then I had told him with a smile, I hope that when we next open this letter, you'll still be by my side. At that time, he leaned into my embrace and laughed. I'll never leave you. But he broke his word. An unbearable stabbing pain flared in Su Xinyao's chest. He looked at the bold, familiar handwriting and unfolded the letter. The very first word felt like a jagged dagger, plunging deep into the center of his heart. Future Su Xinyao, I am so incredibly in love with you. You confessed to me today. I'm so happy, but I'm also terrified. I'm scared that your feelings for me will be fleeting. Scared that before I can even truly enjoy your love, it will all just vanish. Do you know, I dream of you loving me just as much as I love you. Su Xinyao, will our future selves still be together? Will you ever even get the chance to read this? And when you do, will you still remember me? Will there be someone else giving you flowers and treating you well? Someone stealing a kiss while you're busy with your research? Will anyone ever love you as deeply as I do? Future Su Xinyao, could you please try to love me just a little bit more? I'll cherish you more than anyone, and everything else in this entire world. But if you ever break my heart, I truly will leave you. I'll disappear to a place so far away that you'll never be able to find me again. So please, just love me a little bit more. Just a tiny bit is enough. Su Xinyao clutched the letter with trembling hands, his heart aching so intensely he could no longer breathe. Why didn't he just trust me a little bit more? Why does it always take losing everything to finally understand? His mind suddenly flashed back to the campus banyan tree, recalling the way I looked at him. As I forced out those words, I don't love you anymore. I was clearly in so much agony, yet why on earth couldn't he see it then? Su Xinyao raced his car toward the cemetery. Through the pitch-black torrential night rain, he relied on the dim flickering beam of a flashlight to scan every single headstone one by one. Not here, none of these are him. His heart slowly began to wither. Suddenly, his footsteps came to a dead halt. He spotted a bouquet of fresh white daisies before my parents' grave. The daisies were still vibrant despite the downpour. They couldn't have been placed there more than an hour ago. Su Xinyao's breath hitched. My parents had no other living relatives in the city. Their only surviving family was me. Su Xinyao stared blankly at those white daisies, violently swinging the flashlight around to search the surroundings. He cried out desperately, Guyu, you're not dead, right? You're just tricking me, aren't you? You're still alive. There's no way you'd ever forgive me, so you're hiding, right? Please, just let me see you one more time. Just at a single glance, just let me know that you're still breathing. He searched the cemetery with a frantic, lost expression, until his foot suddenly stepped on something hard. Looking down into the muddy, rain-slicked earth, he saw a ring lying there in silence. His gaze froze. He slowly picked it up. It was my wedding ring. Inside the band was the inscription he had personally carved. Su Xinyao will love Guyu forever. Su Xinyao's eyes instantly burned a deep, painful crimson. He lowered his head, frantically searching the ground for his own matching ring. He remembered it being right here somewhere in the dirt. He remembered throwing it right here in this spot. But why couldn't he find it? Why was the ring gone? And why was the person gone too? Why Su Xinyao collapsed to the ground powerless. Traces of moisture streamed endlessly from the corners of his eyes, making it impossible to distinguish between rain and tears. He croaked out a plea, "Please, just let me see you one more time." Through the heavy curtain of rain, he thought he heard a faint sigh. Su Xinyao's breathing hitched in an instant. He lifted his head with stiff mechanical movements, hearing the echo of familiar footsteps approaching from behind. Su Xinyao gripped the ring in his palm with all his might, listening as the rhythmic footsteps grew closer and closer. He squeezed his eyes shut as scalding tears slowly traced paths down his face. It wasn't him. It wasn't Guyu. Palin stepped behind him, holding an umbrella, and slowly crouched down by his side. Su Xinyao stopped searching. "I'm the one who left the flowers. I just heard the news of his death. I couldn't find you anywhere, but I knew you'd eventually come looking for him here." He cast the umbrella aside, letting the torrential downpour soak him to the bone. He wrapped his arms around Su Xinyao from behind, absorbing the weight of his sorrow and the sheer depth of his despair. "He's dead, and that's that. You still have me by your side. Didn't you say we'd get married once you finished things with him? I have my ID right here. Let's go get married at dawn, okay?" Su Xinyao felt as though his heart had been skewered in an instant. "Let's go get married at dawn, okay?" He had once whispered those exact words to me. He shoved Palin away and stared intensely at his face, a face that shared a 70% resemblance to Jie Huaijin. In the past, this face was the sanctuary where he compensated for every past debt of guilt and misplaced love. But at this very moment, it felt like a jagged blade plunging into his chest, repeatedly and bloodily reminding him of exactly who had turned everything into this nightmare. It was him. It was all his own doing. He breathed out his name, Palin. Palin shook his head in a panicked frenzy. "I don't want to hear it. If you're trying to break up with me, I won't listen. You promised you would marry me. I'm begging you, don't say another word. Don't be this cruel to me. I'm begging you." He had a sinking premonition that if Su Xinyao uttered what came next, he would lose her forever. Su Xinyao stared at him in a long, suffocating silence. Then she slowly stood up and began walking away. Palin froze for a beat, then scrambled to keep up with her. She walked with a heavy, deliberate pace, finally coming to a stop before a specific headstone. Palin cast a single glance at the grave, and was instantly paralyzed where he stood. He stared at the black and white photo on the stone. The man in the picture looked almost identical to him. Under his horrified, trembling gaze, Su Xinyao spoke in a low, hollow voice. "His name was Jie Huaijin. He's the man I once loved with all my heart." Palin stared at her stunned. It was as if in a single heartbeat everything finally made sense. He shoved Su Xinyao back, his voice trembling. "So, I was just a damn replacement. So every sweet word you whispered to me was a lie. You said you had never loved anyone else. You told me I was the only one. I acted like a total fool flaunting us in front of Guyu, only to find out you were playing me this whole time. Then why tell me this now? Why couldn't you just keep lying to me forever?" Su Xinyao looked at him with a dead calm expression. "Because there's no point anymore. Everything from the past vanished the moment Guyu left this world." Palin let out a sudden hysterical laugh. "No point. Now that he's dead, you want to play the devoted lover. Why didn't you say it was pointless while he was still alive? You're a hypocrite, disgusting and fake." Su Xinyao lowered her eyes, offering no defense. She simply turned to walk away. Palin screamed at her, retreating back. "You're just as fake as Guyu was." Su Xinyao stopped and turned her gaze icy. "Shut up." Palin glared back. "You want me to shut up? Fine. I'll shut my mouth. And you'll never get to know the truth about him. Like what happened the day before the accident, when he came to find me and what he said." Su Xinyao stiffened, her heart skipping. "He came to see you." Palin stared at her and spoke with a vengeful sneer. "Oh, absolutely. He tracked me down just to tell me he was dying. He listed all your flaws, how you're a mess at home and hate noise, that you're supposedly gentle but deep down you're volatile. And once you lose feelings, you become cold and heartless. How you ignore people when you're pissed off. And how you're just so damn unbearable and cruel. So hateful, so ruthlessly cold." Su Xinyao's vision blurred and a memory of when we first moved in together surfaced. Me standing there with a table full of food, smiling as I waited for her to come home. "Xinyao, no matter where you go, I'll always be right here waiting for you." But now, she had utterly destroyed the only person who would wait for her. She'd throw me away and now she'd never see me again. Palin watched her expression crumble into agony, and though his own heart was breaking, he continued with a twisted sense of satisfaction. "He even wished us a happy marriage. Xinyao, he loved you so much, yet you're the one who killed him." Ha ha! Xinyao felt like a raw nerve had been struck. She lunged forward and grabbed his wrist. "Shut up!" Palin's eyes were bloodshot as he laughed hysterically. "Why should I? You still don't even know the best part, do you? The brakes weren't actually broken that day. I sabotaged them on purpose. I wanted him to see that no matter how much he loved you, you didn't give a damn about him. And man, did you play your part perfectly. Do you know what the last thing he heard before he died was? It was you telling him, if you want to live, crawl out yourself, and it did. Su Xinyao stumbled back completely paralyzed. She stared at Peilin's crazed, frantic face, but her voice had completely failed her. It was true. She was the one who murdered me. What was the point of words anymore? She released her grip and turned to walk away. Peilin screamed after her, Su Xinyao, you're going to rot in regret for the rest of your life. Su Xinyao didn't stop, didn't even flinch. Amidst the endless gray curtain of rain, Peilin watched her silhouette fade and collapsed to his knees. Su Xinyao, don't leave me, he whimpered. But nobody was listening. The downpour finally began to taper off. Su Xinyao walked like a ghost through the drizzle. The world before her was a vast white haze of mist. She wandered aimlessly, a soul without a destination. Battered by the freezing biting wind and drenched by the relentless icy drizzle, the screeching of car brakes echoed around him, and drivers leaned out to hurl insults at his path. Yet he remained utterly deaf to the world. He wandered aimlessly for an eternity, until the deep black night bled into the gray of dawn. Suddenly, the assistant's sharp, panicked voice pierced through. Director Su Peilin set fire to Guyu's house. Su Xinyao froze mid-step, his vacant eyes snapping back into focus. He sprinted toward our home like a madman. The roaring inferno stood like a monstrous beast in the rain, intent on devouring every last trace of my existence. Peilin was being pinned down by the police, screaming nonsense at the top of his lungs. Su Xinyao didn't process a single syllable he said. Instead, he lunged through the police tape, and under the horrified gazes of the crowd, he charged headlong into the blazing fire. No, he had already lost me. He couldn't stand to lose the last fragments of my memory. The flames licked at his clothes, scorching and searing his very skin. But he frantically gathered my garments, and belongings clutching them tightly to his chest. Through a haze of smoke and tears, he suddenly recalled a promise from a lifetime ago, a vow he had once made to me. Then I'll buy a double burial plot. Wait for me down there while I settle things up here, and then I'll come to join you. This time he wouldn't dare break his word. If only I would wait a little longer in the afterlife. He would finally be there to stay by my side. I had always been so agonizingly lonely, with no parents and no friends to lean on, a solitary soul drifting through the world. But for the journey ahead, I would never be alone again. He would accompany me for all eternity, never leaving my side. Su Xinyao's palm was crushed against that ring, the one engraved with the vow to love me forever. As the agonizing heat consumed his entire being, he slowly allowed his eyes to drift shut. In a daze, every sound in his ears at that moment began to fade into absolute silence. The desperate shouts of the firefighters and the frantic cries of his assistant, even Peilin's hysterical screeching, faded into nothingness. Everything became so eerily silent, as if the entire world had simply ceased to exist. Suddenly, a sharp piercing ring erupted in his ears, and his body felt like it was trapped in a plummeting elevator that jerked to a violent stomach-turning halt. His eyes snapped open, and a cacophony of noise instantly flooded his senses. Shouts and music collided in a chaotic blur. Su Xinyao looked around in a daze, completely disoriented, only to find himself standing beneath that old banyan tree at school. A crowd of students surrounded him, watching with curious eyes. What was happening? Why was he back here? Before Su Xinyao could even process his surroundings, a hauntingly familiar voice reached his ears. Su Xinyao, he whipped his head forward, and then he saw me. I was standing there, vibrant and full of life, right before him. I was wearing the white shirt he gave me back in college, looking so youthful, healthy, and completely whole as I stood there. Is this a dream? It has to be a dream, right? If it is, he prayed to never ever wake up again. Su Xinyao's vision blurred with sudden tears. He lunged toward me, desperate to throw himself into my arms. But as he reached out, he heard me say, Su Xinyao, I can't accept your confession. Su Xinyao froze. Confession. He scrutinized my face with trembling intensity. I looked younger than when we last met, vibrant and free from the shadow of any illness. A bizarre, impossible thought began to take root in his mind. He spun around, eyeing the familiar faces of his old classmates, the heart-shaped flower petals on the ground, and the bouquet of white roses in his hands. This was the exact day of his junior year when he confessed to me. Su Xinyao stood paralyzed, rooted to the spot. Then a wave of sheer, overwhelming euphoria washed over him. There are two things in life that are truly agonizing. First, being powerless to change your future, and second, being unable to undo the mistakes of your past. But it seemed heaven had truly taken pity on him, granting him a journey back through time, to give him a final chance to rewrite history. He surged forward, throwing himself into my embrace, clinging to the warmth of my living, breathing body. Over and over again, he cried out my name, Guyu, Guyu. Having endured the soul-crushing agony of losing me, it felt as though he had finally ascended from hell. A world with me in it felt like a glimpse of heaven. He buried his face deep against my chest, tears streaming uncontrollably as I stood there stunned. But I just rejected you. Su Xinyao lifted his head, as if only now truly processing the words I'd spoken. He forced a smile. Stop joking around. I'll treat you so much better from now on, okay? He wasn't even remotely worried about me not loving him. He knew deep down with absolute certainty just how much I adored him. And that was exactly why 3 years ago he was able to weaponize my feelings to hurt me. But things would be different now. He wouldn't let that happen. Perhaps the heavens granted him this second chance at life, specifically so he could make amends for everything. This time, no matter what obstacles came their way, he would never ever let go of my hand again. He looked at me with a tender smile, but I merely replied with a flat, cold tone, "I'm not joking." My expression was dead serious. Su Xinyao's smile faltered. "But why?" I frowned, looking him straight in the eye. "To reject your confession." "Do I really need a reason?" Su Xinyao froze. He suddenly remembered the moment he demanded a divorce. He had used that exact same indifferent tone with me, asking me if a divorce really needed a reason. Now that those words were being turned back on him, he finally realized just how much they cut to the bone. It felt like a jagged blade carving into his heart piece by piece. Su Xinyao's fingertips trembled with a sharp, stinging pain. "I can change whatever you don't like. I can fix it all, I swear." He tried to smile, but it looked more tragic than a sob. "Can't you just give me one more chance?" He truly couldn't bear to experience that feeling of losing me all over again. It was a torment far worse than death itself. My gaze wavered for a split second. Su Xinyao, thinking he had finally reached me, whispered softly, "Ah, you. Everything I did wrong in the past, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Please don't leave me, okay?" I fell silent for a long moment, letting out a heavy, weary sigh. "I didn't want to tell you this, but since you're so determined to have an answer, I suppose I can tell you. Su Xinyao, there's no complex reason for my rejection. It's simply because I don't love you anymore." Su Xinyao stood frozen to the spot, staring at me. My expression remained cold and indifferent. "Furthermore, I already have someone I like, so please stop harassing me from now on." Su Xinyao bit her lip. "Someone you like who?" I remained silent for a heartbeat before slowly shifting my gaze behind her. Su Xinyao turned her head with mechanical stiffness, spotting a lone figure standing just outside the crowd. She recognized her. Instantly, it was Chao Roxy. Her face turned pale in a split second. The next moment, she watched as I brushed past her to stand directly by Chao Roxy's side. "Junior, I've fallen for you. Will you be my girlfriend?" Nobody expected the confession to take such a shocking turn. Beneath the shade of the emerald banyan tree, Chao Roxy looked up from her research papers, her eyes meeting mine with a steady gaze. There was no trace of actual affection in my eyes, yet here I was professing my love to her. Chao Roxy glanced briefly at the person behind me, and the reality of the situation clicked instantly. Under my tense, expectant watch, she gave a slow, deliberate nod. "All right." As those two words left her lips, the atmosphere on campus ignited like a powder keg, erupting into a wave of gasps and whispers. "Guyu, what the hell are you thinking? We've all watched you and Xinyao for 3 years. How can you suddenly say you don't love her?" "Exactly. Didn't you tell me just yesterday that if Su Xinyao ever confessed to you, you'd say yes in a heartbeat?" The students' sharp interrogations rang in my ears, but I just lowered my head, tuning out the noise, and took Chao Roxy's hand as I walked up to Su Xinyao. "This is the reason why I can't be with you." Our fingers interlaced tightly under the bright sun, a sight that felt like a hot iron searing Su Xinyao's eyes. She sucked in a sharp, ragged breath, desperately trying to maintain her composure. She grabbed my arm with a trembling grip, her eyes burning with unshed tears. "Why her? You know exactly who she is. Tell me. You're just doing this to spite me, aren't you? What did I do wrong? Tell me, and I'll change everything. If I've done something to upset you, I'll do whatever it takes to make it up to you. But this isn't funny." "Ah, you, this joke. It's not funny at all." I coldly brushed his hand off my arm, locking eyes with Su Xinyao. I spoke with terrifying calm. "This is no joke. You've done nothing wrong. It's simply that your confession came too late. Just this morning, I fell for Chao Roxy at first sight. If you had asked me yesterday, I would have said yes. But Su Xinyao, once you miss your chance, it's gone. There is no making amends for this." Su Xinyao shook his head. "There is if you just give me a chance." My voice turned icy. "And why on earth should I give you anything?" Su Xinyao stood there paralyzed. I turned and led Chao Roxy away. He instinctively tried to chase after us, but I stopped him with a cold warning. "If you keep following me, it will only make me despise you even more." Su Xinyao's footsteps froze midair. He could only watch helplessly as I held Chao Roxy's hand, walking further and further out of his life. He clenched his fist in confusion. Why? Why is the past changing like this? Why is everything different now? Where did I go wrong? Once we rounded the corner, I released Chao Roxy's hand. Chao Roxy's skin was incredibly fair. A faint red mark lingered where I had held her wrist. I quickly offered an apology. "I'm so sorry, Chao." Chao Roxy glanced at her wrist, then looked at me knowingly. "Your eyes say you still love him." As a psychology major, she looked down at her textbooks, then back at me with a piercing, quiet gaze. Her eyes seemed to strip away my defenses and peer into my soul. "You're in love with him, yet you're desperately pushing him away." Why my fingertips tightened into a fist, I whispered under my breath. "If you knew for a fact someone would destroy you later, even if you loved them, wouldn't it be smarter to run?" Chao Roxy arched an eyebrow. "And how could you know for certain that he'll hurt you?" A bitter smirk played on my lips. I looked down at my palm during the accident. A jagged scar had sliced right through it. Now it was clean and flawless as if nothing had ever happened. In this timeline, indeed, it had never happened. Just as Su Xinyao has technically never harmed me yet, and I haven't officially endured those heart-shattering events, the truth is I've already lived through every agonizing second. Even with this second chance at life, that dark history remains a burden I've authentically carried. The moment I closed my eyes in that fire, I expected to perish amidst my regrets. To my absolute shock, the heavens granted me a miraculous redo. Rewinding time to the very day Su Xinyao confessed to me, I wasn't lying back there. If Su Xinyao had confessed just one day earlier, or even a mere 60 seconds sooner, the version of me from back then would have accepted. But his confession hit right as I regressed. How poetic. From the very first second our eyes met, I realized that Su Xinyao had regressed as well. The woman who cut me the deepest in my past life is now preaching to me about making amends and talking about the past as if it's something we can move beyond. But for me, what I endured is simply unforgivable. To say I harbor zero resentment would be a blatant lie. Yet I don't even have the energy for a revenge plot. In my previous life, I squandered far too much of my existence on Su Xinyao. This time, I only want to live for myself. I have no active desire to destroy Su Xinyao, but he must face the consequences of his actions. If I had to suffer through it all, then why should Su Xinyao get a free pass? I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling a fresh wave of guilt as I looked at Chao Ruoxi. I never intended to drag an innocent bystander into this mess, but now that she's involved, we have to see it through. I know you're searching for an original research manuscript, and I know exactly where it's hidden. Chao Ruoxi is something of a legend on campus, an ice queen academic goddess, who is as brilliant as she is wealthy, rich, generous, and utterly focused. Back then, her massive bounty for that lost paper caused a total frenzy throughout the university. Every student and professor was hunting for it, yet it wasn't discovered until a month later. Chao Ruoxi gave me a cool calculating look. Your price. I explained Su Xinyao won't stop pursuing me. I need you to pose as my girl friend. Chao Ruoxi arched an eyebrow. Why me? I fell silent for a heartbeat. It has to be you. Because Su Xinyao could tolerate me being with absolutely anyone else, but she could never ever accept Chao Ruoxi. Chao Ruoxi might not even recognize Su Xinyao, yet I've accompanied Xinyao to watch her countless times. Chao Ruoxi is her sister, specifically her younger half-sister. Years ago, when Su Xinyao father was abusive, her mother couldn't endure the degradation anymore. She abandoned her, divorced, and married another man. Later, when Su's father finally died, Su Xinyao was only 7 years old. I went with Xinyao to track down her mother, only to watch her get ruthlessly kicked out by servants, branded as nothing but a filthy little beggar. It was a day of torrential rain. The freezing downpour soaked Xinyao to the bone, as she stood there battered and humiliated in the courtyard. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she saw a warm, cozy home, where her mother was cradling another child, whispering, "You are mommy's most precious treasure, my one and only baby." That was the very first time I saw Su Xinyao cry. With bloodshot eyes, she stared at that heartwarming scene inside the villa, completely powerless to change her reality. Consequently, she became obsessed with rivaling Chao Ruoxi in everything, even though Ruoxi didn't even know she existed. Every single competition Chao Ruoxi entered, Xinyao would fight like a demon to snatch first place. In her mind, if she always stood on a higher podium than Chao Ruoxi, then maybe her mother would finally notice her. But her mother never spared her a second glance. Perhaps she had simply forgotten Xinyao ever existed. Awards aside, in front of Chao Ruoxi, she felt like a perpetual loser, a permanent second best, an invisible, pathetic failure. That's why the moment I confessed to Chao Ruoxi, Su Xinyao's reaction was so incredibly explosive. It was as if every beautiful thing in her world was being stolen away by Chao Ruoxi. First her mother, and now me. Su Xinyao spent the entire day searching for me like a lost soul, unable to find a single trace of where I was. Until, as if guided by a ghostly instinct, she walked to the apartment we were supposed to share and saw the lights were on. Her gaze trembled with a flicker of hope. He immediately rushed up the stairs. He frantically cried out my name. Guyu threw open the door, only to find the apartment in a state of total chaos. I was directing the moving crew, watching as they cleared out every single item. I don't want any of this anymore. Just haul it all to the junkyard, please. Su Xinyao froze in shock, throwing it all away. He watched as the matching items we bought together were tossed out like worthless scraps. He bit his lip hard and strode toward me. Do you really despise me that much? I shrugged nonchalantly. I don't hate you. But since the love is gone, it's better to make a clean, swift break. He gritted his teeth and demanded why. Guyu, just tell me what happened, please. Everything was perfect yesterday, wasn't it? Why the sudden change of heart? Is Chao Ruoxi blackmailing you? Did the Chao family threaten you? I let out a weary sigh, looking Su Xinyao straight in the eye. They haven't done a thing to me. I've simply grown tired of the life we shared. It's boring, Su Xinyao croaked out. Then tell me how to make it interesting. I'll do anything you want. I chuckled, but I don't want to admit my mistakes anymore. Everything I do is wrong in your eyes. He interrogated me with rising fury. So Cal Roxy is the right person for you. How much do you even know about her? I looked at him with a mocking grin. True love doesn't require an explanation. You know that better than anyone, don't you? Su Xinyao was suddenly struck dumb. It had been so long since he'd seen me smile like that. For a moment his mind went blank, lost in a daze. He vaguely recalled that back then I smiled all the time. On every single date, I would hold his hand with a grin. Every time he came home, he'd find me with a feast prepared, smiling as I waited for him at the table. Back then, seeing my smile made him feel like he could conquer any hardship. But then, Zi Huajin died. My once warm smile suddenly became an eyesore to him. Every time he saw me grinning, he'd bitterly wonder how I could still be so happy. How could I laugh when Zi Huajin had died right in front of me? So he began weaponizing words to rip me apart. During those 3 long years of divorce, it wasn't that he couldn't let go. Rather, every time we reached the final step, he was the one who intentionally backed away, because he hadn't yet satisfied his thirst for my agony. He wanted to slowly break me down piece by piece, until I could never show that radiant smile again. In the end, he succeeded. By the time we met again, I had finally forgotten how to smile. My joy had been tainted with bitterness, exhaustion, and pure unadulterated pain. Right until the moment I died, that genuine smile never returned. Su Xinyao felt as though he'd been struck by a physical blow. For the first time in his entire life, he experienced a heartache so profound it defied description. He staggered backward, unable to bear the crushing weight. He covered his eyes with a trembling hand, slumping heavily against the cold wall behind him. Don't smile like that anymore. Stop looking at me that way. I'm begging you. The curve of my lips slowly vanished. The sharp sting of sorrow seemed to flow from Su Xinyao's heart, bleeding all the way into the depths of my own chest. Erasing the past is like uprooting a massive ancient tree. It's excruciating, but eventually the pain will fade. I refuse to remain a prisoner of my history forever, and I'm done playing a role in Su Xinyao's drama. I watched as the movers loaded the last of my life into the truck. Then I turned and headed down the stairs. Su Xinyao desperately wanted to give chase, but then he saw me under the streetlights walking toward Chao Roxy. I took Chao Roxy's hand in mine, and with a look of pure adoration, I whispered, "Let's go. Let's go." His footsteps came to a dead halt. He watched us walking side by side into the distance until we slowly vanished into the shadows beyond the traffic lights. It was exactly like the day his mother abandoned him, leaving him as the sole survivor standing in the dark. I returned to the small apartment I had rented for myself. The moment I powered on my phone, a call flashed on the screen. It was Ye Huijin. I stared at the contact name, my mind momentarily blank. After a long pause, I finally answered. The second the line connected, Ye Huijin's frantic voice immediately pierced through. "Guyu, I heard you actually turned Su Xinyao down. Tell me, did that woman do something to you?" I froze. Although the Xie Huaijin from my past life was loathsome, in this timeline, he hadn't committed a single sin yet. Just as I was about to open my mouth to speak, Xie Huaijin continued with a sly chuckle. "Actually, why don't you just give me Su Xinyao's contact info? I'll make sure to give her a piece of my mind for you." I was struck dumb by his sheer audacity. Suddenly, I let out a sharp mocking laugh. I wasn't even angry at Xie Huaijin anymore. I was furious with my past self. The way Xie Huaijin spoke was so incredibly sketchy, yet in my previous life, I was completely oblivious. I had genuinely treated him like my closest brother. Looking back at it now, Xie Huaijin was clearly already lusting after Su Xinyao back then. It's just that, in my past life, Su Xinyao was utterly obsessed with me, and I was too dense to ever catch Xie Huaijin's subtle hints. I had never even allowed the two of them to meet, but now things were different. I pulled up Su Xinyao's contact details and sent them over to him without a second thought. Sure, go ahead and scold her for me. Since Xie Huaijin wants her so badly, I don't mind playing matchmaker for them. Meanwhile, Su Xinyao was staring blankly at the hollow, empty apartment. Suddenly, her phone buzzed with a notification. "Hello? I'm Guyu's best friend Xie Huaijin." Her eyes flickered with a strange intensity. Since her regression, this was the very first time she had seen anything related to the name Xie Huaijin. In her previous life, Xie Huaijin never had any way of reaching her. She immediately dialed the number and demanded, "Where on earth did you get my personal number?" Xie Huaijin calmly explained, "Guyu gave it to me." Upon hearing those words, Su Xinyao gripped her phone until her knuckles turned white, first Chao Roxy, and now handing her number over to Xie Huaijin. A chilling, unbelievable realization began to dawn on her. Could it be that Guyu regressed too? Did he also come back from the future? Is that why everything in this life is so drastically different? Is that why he's acting with such cold-blooded cruelty? Because he absolutely despises me now, doesn't he? Su Xinyao bit her lip hard, drawing blood. Through the receiver, Xie Huaijin's voice continued to drone. Ayu said he doesn't feel a thing for you anymore. Besides, he and Chao Roxy are getting along great now. Maybe you should consider moving on to someone else. His intentions were thinly veiled and predatory. Su Xinyao cut him off with a frigid, sharp tone. "Never. Xie Huaijin, in this life or the next, it will never be you." Don't ever show your face in front of me again. Before Jie Huaijin could even utter a response, she slammed the phone down and ended the call. She tried to dial my number in a frenzy, only to realize she'd been blacklisted on every platform. Su Xinyao took a long, shuddering breath, her knuckles turning white as she gripped her phone. Her mind was a chaotic storm of conflicting thoughts. If I had regressed too, how could he ever face me? He'd pushed me to the brink. I must absolutely loathe him. Yet, letting go was an option he simply couldn't accept. But if Guyu truly had come back from the future, and all of this was merely a calculated revenge plot, then did that mean he didn't actually love Chao Ruoxi? Was there still a sliver of hope to make amends and find a way to be together once again? The next day, I ran straight into Su Xinyao at school. I froze for a split second, stunned, before trying to brush past her and keep walking. But Su Xinyao lunged out, seizing my wrist in a vice grip. "What exactly are you so afraid of?" she demanded. I looked her dead in the eye, my gaze unwavering. And why on earth would I be afraid? Su Xinyao searched my face with an intense, burning gaze. Then why are you trying so hard to avoid me? Why did you suddenly confess to Chao Roxy? And why did you throw Jie Huaijin's contact at me? You're pushing me away with every single step. What is it that you're so desperately running from? My breath hitched for a fleeting moment. Recovering, I replied icily, avoiding someone I don't love? Is that a crime? Su Xinyao eyes darkened. You don't love me. I don't buy that lie for a second. Before I could even process her words, Su Xinyao suddenly surged forward on her tiptoes and pressed her lips forcefully against mine. The crisp, familiar scent of pine and cedar began to flood my senses and seep into my soul. My breathing instantly came to a dead stop. I shoved Su Xinyao away with a violent jerk. What is wrong with you? Su Xinyao stared at the deep crimson flushing my ears and smirked. Kissing someone you don't love, yet you still blush like that. I shot her a cold glance. Does a blush automatically mean love? By that logic, I must be obsessed with Chao Ruoxi, because I flush every single time our lips meet. Su Xinyao's expression instantly turned predatory and dark. Stop using her just to spite me. Gu Yu. I looked at her, scoffing mockingly. To spite you. You honestly think I'm doing this to get a reaction? Why on earth would I waste my energy on that? Su Xinyao gritted her teeth. Because of those 3 years? Because of those 3 years, you absolutely loathe me, don't you? Because of Jie Huaijin, you're drowning in hate, aren't you? You're a regressor too, aren't you? My heart skipped a violent beat. I slowly tightened my fist. What 3 years? What are you rambling about? Su Xinyao grabbed my shoulders with a desperate force, forcing me to look her directly in the eye. You know exactly what I mean. Gu Yu, you also came back from 7 years in the future, didn't you? I remained indifferent. 7 years, Su Xinyao. Have you developed a fever and started hallucinating? I stared her down and brushed her hands off me. If I needed to be reborn just to lose interest in you, then I must have been more pathetic than I thought. Su Xinyao's lips trembled on the verge of speaking. I cut her off ruthlessly. Su Xinyao, this pathetic stalking of yours is only making me despise you even more. Su Xinyao sucked in a sharp, ragged breath, trying to swallow the bitter grief rising in her throat. But she couldn't stop her voice from cracking into a raspy plea. But what if I love you? What if I truly love you? What if I literally can't survive in a world without you? Would you still be this cold-blooded? She was completely out of options. I was being far too heartless. Utterly, brutally stone cold. It was as if I was determined to sever every single thread connecting us. As if there wasn't a snowball's chance in hell I'd ever look back at her. Besides begging like a dog, what else could she possibly do? My heart gave a faint phantom twitch for a split second. But I don't love you anymore, Su Xinyao. If you genuinely claim to love me, then please stay as far away from me as possible. Get out of my life and stay out. We were ancient history a long time ago. Su Xinyao, refusing to surrender, pressed on desperately. Is it really over? What about that child? Is that also buried in the past? He knew mentioning that child would pierce right through me. If I showed even a shred of agony, or offered the slightest flicker of a response, he'd know for a fact that I'm a regressor. He'd be certain that my coldness is just a facade born of pure rage. He'd be convinced that I'm still hopelessly in love with him. But as he scrutinized my eyes with predatory intensity, he found my gaze as still as a dead sea without a single ripple. I just looked back at him calmly. What child? Su Xinyao looked as if all the life had been sucked out of him, staggering back a step, utterly paralyzed. I let out a heavy, weary sigh. Sometimes falling out of love with someone doesn't require a mountain of reasons. Su Xinyao, if you truly love me as much as you claim, then I'm begging you, just set me free, okay? Su Xinyao stared at me, haunted, begging him. He suddenly remembered a time long ago, amidst the frozen, desolate wasteland of Antarctica, where he had ignored my endless, desperate phone calls. The first time I pleaded, please just believe me once. I swear I didn't kill Huaijin. Later I begged, please forgive me, don't divorce me. Please just come home and see me, okay? Every single plea back then was a desperate prayer for his love. Now I was begging him to just let me go. Su Xinyao gazed at me with a hollow stare as a sudden chilling numbness began to crawl through his very veins. With a freezing agony blooming in his chest, he spoke almost involuntarily, what if I can't, what if I refuse? What if I absolutely refuse to let go? My eyes gradually turned into shards of ice. Then I will only grow to loathe you even more. Having said my piece, I shoved past Su Xinyao and walked away. I didn't slow down until I rounded the corner, finally letting out the breath I was holding. When I unclenched my fist, my palm was a bloody mess mangled by my own fingernails. That child is still a wound in my heart that I cannot bear to touch. But Su Xinyao is a past I wish to bury deeper than anything else. I composed myself and headed to class, only to turn around and find Chao Roxy standing right behind me. She arched an eyebrow. You really are a riddle. Even I can't seem to read you. Do you actually love him or is it pure hatred? I remained silent for a heartbeat before replying, it doesn't matter. In time, both the love and the hate will simply vanish. Chao Roxy shrugged, seemingly unconvinced. But you just used me as a shield again. Where's my compensation? I blanked for a second, about to ask how I'd used her, then it hit me. That lie I told Su Xinyao about kissing Chao Roxy. Fine, if that counts, I sighed. I get it. What research paper did you say you wanted? In Chao Roxy's world, academics always reigned supreme. I began scouring my memories of the past life for the rare materials she had spent a fortune seeking, only to hear her say, I don't want any of that. I froze in surprise. Chao Roxy gazed calmly into the depths of my eyes. This time I want a kiss. I stared at her deadpan expression. A kiss. Since when did you become such a bold delinquent? Chao Roxy curled her lips slightly. I don't feel the need to explain myself to you. Just give me a straight answer, yes or no. Acting like a rogue with such righteous confidence. I shook my head, stifling a laugh. Sorry, but I have zero interest in playing games. I turned to walk away, but my wrist was suddenly snatched. She yanked me back with surprising force. My instincts flared in alarm as I tried to stumble backward, but Chao Roxy had already gripped my shoulders. She locked her hands around my neck, and right there beneath the bustling faculty building, she stood on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to mine. My heart hammered violently against my ribs. I reached out desperate to push her away. Chao Roxy, her eyes were half-lidded, her gaze behind those thick lashes eerily tranquil. She catalogued every single one of my reactions, until the tips of my ears burned a deep crimson, only then slowly releasing her hold. I recoiled, putting distance between us. The corner of Chao Roxy's mouth twitched upward. So even a kiss from someone you don't love causes a blush. I bit my lip, wiping my mouth with the back of my hand. My ears glowing red from the encounter, though most of that heat was fueled by pure irritation. I lived 27 years in my previous life, and now living it all over again. To think I'd actually be forced kissed by a mere sophomore. I took a deep, steadying breath, allowing my visible fury to fade into a mask of cold composure. I looked directly at Chao Roxy, my gaze freezing into shards of ice. Is this a game to you? I have a class to get to. Let go. My expression was so chillingly detached that Chao Roxy visibly faltered, slowly loosening her grip on my wrist. Without sparing her a single backward glance, I turned and vanished into the faculty building, leaving Chao Roxy alone to watch my retreating figure. She pursed her lips slightly, opening the research folder in her hands. Under the section titled Studies on Male Emotional Response, she scribbled, prone to duplicity regarding feelings. After a brief hesitation, she added another note, reaction to a kiss from an unwanted source, induces physical arousal. The tip of her pen lingered over the words, unwanted source. Chao Roxy fell silent for a long moment, then snapped her notebook shut. In this era of hyperconnectivity, no matter what happens, word of mouth travels at a terrifyingly lightning-fast speed. By the end of my second lecture, the campus forum exploded. 2 viral photos had earned me thousands of hateful comments. The first was a snapshot of me kissing Su Xinyao, and the second was me locked in a kiss with Chao Roxy. The timestamp between those 2 photos was less than 10 measly minutes. The comments section ranged from 2-timing scumbag to shameless player. As for the fact that I was force kissed, nobody cared. Not that I gave a damn anyway. When I returned to my apartment after class, I found Su Xinyao lurking outside my door. The moment she spotted me, she lunged forward, grabbing my arm with a desperate grip. She surged onto her tiptoes, trying to force a kiss on me, but I whipped my head aside and her lips landed uselessly on my cheek. Su Xinyao froze, her eyes shimmering with a rim of red. Why? Why can you kiss her but you won't even touch me? I exhaled sharply, my patience wearing thin. Chao Roxy and I are officially in a relationship. As for you and me, what exactly are we? I looked her dead in the eye. We are nothing. So move aside, I'm going inside. I shoved past her, entered the room, and slammed the door shut. Su Xinyao suddenly thrust her hand into the doorframe to block me. A dull, sickening thud echoed through the hallway. The heavy door slammed directly onto Su Xinyao's fingers. She let out a muffled groan of agony, her face instantly draining of color. My instincts took over, and I hurriedly grabbed her hand. Seeing her once fair fingers bruised and swelling rapidly, my heart twitched. Are you out of your mind? I went inside to find some antiseptic, but Su Xinyao lunged forward and hugged me tightly from behind. You still care about me, don't you? Your expression, you can't hide the truth. I froze. You're delusional. I'd react like that for anyone who got hurt. Just like how anyone could have kissed me. Su Xinyao's voice cracked. Guyu, you really are heartless. I thought to myself, no matter how cruel I am, it's nothing compared to you. I closed my eyes tightly, remembering how many times in our previous life, Su Xinyao had left me staring at her cold, retreating back. My heart immediately turned back to ice. I coldly shoved Su Xinyao away. Since you're fine, you can leave now. And don't bother coming back here again. Su Xinyao slammed her palm against the door to stop it. Tomorrow is my birthday. You promised me you'd spend this year with me, remember? I had indeed promised her that. Not just for this year either. I had sworn to spend every single birthday by her side. But that was a lifetime ago. I took a deep, steadying breath and looked down at Su Xinyao. Fine. Fine, Su Xinyao. I'll accompany you tomorrow. I'll spend this one last birthday with you. And tomorrow we will end this toxic cycle forever. That evening, Su Xinyao sent me an address. Staring at the 3 words on the screen, my gaze darkened with a heavy weight. Mount Longhua, a small peak behind the street, where we used to live a long, long time ago. Since moving away over a decade ago, neither of us had ever set foot there again. But that mountain, its significance to Su Xinyao and me is immeasurable. It was the exact spot where we met for the very first time. I let out a heavy sigh. Just as I was about to set my phone down, Qiao Roxy called, "Come downstairs." Startled, I sprinted toward the massive floor-to-ceiling window. Tugging the heavy curtains aside with a sharp snap, I spotted a solitary ethereal figure standing below. As if hearing the rustle of the fabric, Qiao Roxy tilted her head upward, locking eyes with me across the 3-story gap. The amber streetlights danced in the depths of her eyes, lending her a flicker of warmth that felt entirely out of character. I froze for a heartbeat, then scrambled down the stairs to meet her. "What are you doing here at this hour?" Qiao Roxy's lips twitched slightly. "I'm here to apologize for the incident earlier today. I was purely focused on my research project. I never anticipated that the school forum would drag you into such a toxic scandal because of it. I'm sorry." I stared at her in silence. Truth be told, I had been absolutely livid. But seeing her like this, bowing her head in genuine contrition right in front of me, my simmering rage suddenly evaporated. I realized then that Qiao Roxy is just an academic nerd obsessed with logic. Social nuances and reputations are clearly foreign concepts to her. I reached out as Qiao Roxy watched me with a dazed look, giving her shoulder a firm yet gentle pat. "Just don't pull a stunt on Lelsa. Don't say sees. You're so buried in your research that you act like a total NPC." Qiao Roxy blinked, confused. "And NPC?" I paused, realizing I'd used a slang term that wouldn't trend for years. It means acting like a programmed robot. No genuine emotions. No independent thoughts. Just following a script without understanding the why. Basically, exactly like you. Qiao Roxy's brow furrowed in deep thought. "Is that so? Are people like that considered repulsive?" I shook my head slowly. "Not repulsive. But certainly not the type of person people adore." Qiao Roxy gazed at me with a soft, vulnerable intensity. "But nobody has ever taught me how to be anything else." The moonlight pooled in her eyes, looking as pure and tranquil as still water. "Could you teach me how to be human? I'm willing to trade anything I have in exchange." Caught in the gravity of her soul-piercing gaze, I felt the tips of my ears begin to burn. I hurriedly averted my eyes to hide my flustered state. I was just about to ask what you could possibly offer in exchange, but the words died in my throat before I could speak. Instead, I simply said, "Fine. I accept your proposal. On one condition, you come somewhere with me tomorrow." Early the next morning, the moment I stepped out, I saw Su Xinyao already waiting patiently at the base of my building. Morning, for the first time in what felt like forever, I actually offered Su Xinyao a genuine smile. Su Xinyao's eyes lit up instantly. "Morning. Are you in a particularly good mood today?" I nodded slightly. "Yeah. Anyone would be happy traveling with the person they love." Su Xinyao froze in his tracks. He stared at me completely blindsided, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Gu you," before he could finish. I suddenly waved with a bright grin at someone behind him. Su Xinyao stiffened, turning around only to see Qiao Roxy walking toward us. It felt like a bucket of ice water had been dumped over his head. His face darkened into a mask of pure gloom. He watched helplessly as I effortlessly took Qiao Roxy's hand, flashing her an adoring smile. It's not a problem if I bring my girlfriend along, right? Su Xinyao's gaze was glued to our interlaced fingers. A numbing chill crept from his heart, freezing him to the bone. He took a sharp, ragged breath. If I said it was a problem, would you leave her behind? I shook my head, not a chance. Deep down, he already knew that was the answer. My resolve to be with Chao Roxy was unwavering, just as my determination to cut him off and end our history for good was absolute. Once I make a decision, almost nothing can sway me. I used to change for him, but those days are long dead. Yet he still can't wrap his head around it. Exactly when did I fall for Chao Roxy? Was it because he constantly dragged me to see her? Did I realize then that Chao Roxy was simply superior to him? While he was busy crawling through a dark personal hell, Chao Roxy was like the sun, radiant, pure, and untouched. But if one could be the son who would choose to rot in hell, he used to believe I was the only one who could pull him out of the abyss. But now I've chosen to stand by Chao Roxy's side. No matter how hard he tries to win me back, I'm blind to him. What else can he possibly do? Can our shared memories make my heart soften even just a little? Just a tiny sliver. As we reached the mountainside, the sky suddenly broke into a downpour. The three of us scrambled toward the shelter of a gazebo. Su Xingyao spoke up abruptly. The very first time we met, it was a rainy day just like this. And it was in this exact same pavilion. I looked up in silence. The carvings we left on the gazebo over a decade ago were still there, as if they had never faded with time. Yet in reality, everything had changed. Back then, I had run away from home after a massive fight with my parents, only to end up hopelessly lost in these woods. The rain was absolutely torrential. I was all alone in this gazebo screaming for help in pure terror. Su Xingyao heard my desperate cries. She stayed by my side, comforting me throughout the entire night. And at dawn, she carefully guided me back down the mountain. Many years later, Su Xingyao committed countless betrayals against me. But whenever I recalled that one night, that girl who was shivering with cold herself but still held me tight, offering me warmth and making me feel safe, I found it in me to forgive her for everything. But even a reservoir of warmth like that is bound to run dry eventually. Trading my entire life for one night of shelter? As far as I'm concerned, the debt has been paid in full. I offered no response. Su Xingyao continued. I remember there was an old man downhill who rented out tents. Grandpa Li used to. Let's just go rent the tents, I said, cutting her off mid-sentence. Go rent them now. It looks like we're stuck here for the night. I was dead set on not taking a trip down memory lane with her. Holding Chao Roxy's hand, I headed straight back down. Su Xingyao stared at my retreating back, her pale lips trembling, slightly before she followed behind us. I originally intended to rent 3 separate tents, but unfortunately only 2 were left in stock. I handed one over to Su Xingyao. Chao Roxy and I will share one. You take the other. Su Xingyao gasped, wait, no. I cut her off with a cold stare. There's no about it. Su Xingyao, we aren't what we used to be anymore. I have a girlfriend now. From this moment on, my life will only ever be intertwined with my girlfriend's, not with yours. I shoved the tent pack into Su Xinyao's hand. If you still can't distinguish the past from reality, then spend tonight getting a crystal clear look. You and I are officially nothing to each other. My tone was so frigid it didn't possess a single ripple of emotion. Su Xingyao stared at me paralyzed. A sudden deathly chill began to crawl through her very veins. The hundreds of things she had practiced saying on the way here all evaporated in a heartbeat, scattered by my 4 short icy words, gradually becoming nothing. At that moment, her heart throbbed with such agony she could barely breathe. Every ounce of her logic went up in smoke. She blurted out uncontrollably, do you really love her that much? Do you truly care for her this deeply? If you were forced to choose between us, if only one of us could survive today. She choked on a sob mid-sentence. Yet her voice remained raw and trembling as she continued. Like, would you still choose her? Deep down, she knew the answer would be unbearable. Yet Su Xingyao continued to search my eyes with desperation, hoping to catch even the faintest glimmer of concern. But there wasn't a single shred of it. I stared back at her with total indifference. Motionless amidst the torrential downpour, I watched her with a gaze that was both calm and sadistic. Yes, I replied. The midnight sky was an abyss of darkness. The relentless unending sheets of rain draped a heavy charcoal shroud over the entire world. The rhythmic drumming of raindrops on the tent created a sharp hypnotic cacophony. Chao Roxy hung the flashlight from the top of the tent, looking down to see me lost in a deep trance. She lowered her gaze and whispered, you only called me here. 'Cause of Su Xingyao, didn't you? I shifted my gaze toward Chao Roxy. It wasn't exactly for her, I said flatly. It was for my own sake. I told you once before, if you know someone is destined to destroy you, it's best to sever every single tie with them. Right now, I'm just practicing self-preservation. Chao Roxy shook her head. I don't follow. I turned to look at Chao Roxy. Her face still held the soft traces of youth. His eyes were so incredibly close to mine. They were like dark onyx stones shimmering with a faint dim glow in the night. So pure, so flawless. It was as if they had never weathered a single storm, which is why his academic resolve remained so unshakable. My heart inexplicably softened at the sight. You don't need to understand. Chao Roxy's brow furrowed slightly in frustration. Why do all of you always use that same old line? She lowered her gaze, looking dejected. My mother says it. My mentor says it too. It's like I'm just a machine built solely for studying. You were right when you called me an NPC last time. I truly am lost. She stared up at the top of the tent, drifting into a daze. Everyone constantly tells me, just do whatever you want to do. But what exactly is it that I want? You always tell me I don't need to know, and you never share what you're actually thinking. I only chose to study psychology, to finally figure out why the human heart is so damn complicated, to know what the people around me are truly feeling. But all my research results tell me that there are no answers, that there is absolutely no conclusion. Perhaps I'm destined to spend my entire life trapped in this world of total confusion. Chow Roxy turned her head to face me. Can you tell me why? A fragile flickering light danced in her eyes. A ripple of emotion stirred deep within my chest. I whispered softly, because ignorance is often the greatest treasure. Your mother, your mentor, and even we all want to shield you. We don't want you to experience the ugliness. It's like a crystal ball. It shouldn't be tainted by filth. Beautiful things should be preserved in a vacuum forever, unpolluted by the world's darkness. Chow Roxy watched me in silence, her gaze deepened, turning intense. And what if I want to step out of that vacuum? She leaned her body slightly toward me. Startled, I couldn't help but recoil backward. But I lost my balance and tumbled backward, until Chow Roxy firmly seized my wrist, pulling me directly toward her. She stared deep into my eyes, her long lashes fluttering with a gentle tremor. What if I actually want to be tainted? She was dangerously close. My breath hitched in my throat at this proximity. At this range, I could practically count her individual lashes. I could feel the warmth of her exhales against my skin. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, completely out of control. Then Chow Roxy finally released her grip on my wrist. She continued to lean closer within the tent's confines. From outside in the rain, the glowing lamp cast our shadows clearly against the fabric of the tent. In that silhouette, a man sat on the ground looking up at Chow Roxy, while a girl knelt slowly, lowering her head toward him. The two silhouettes gradually merged into one, looking exactly like a deep kiss. Su Xinyao clenched her fist until they turned white. The torrential rain had soaked her to the bone. Staring at the shadow play inside that tent, her entire body tensed up to the breaking point. She squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, stepping forward to grab the tent's zipper. But after only one step, she froze in her tracks. My icy gaze flashed through her mind. Replaying my words, Su Xinyao, this kind of behavior only makes me loathe you. I truly despise you. Su Xinyao slowly covered her eyes with her hand. Overwhelmed by self-loathing, she stood in the rain for an eternity before dragging her feet back toward the gazebo. Inside the tent, as Chow Roxy's breath was practically mingling with my own, she suddenly blurted out, "A bug?" I blinked in confusion and turned my head, only to see Chow Roxy plucking a tiny insect from my hair. She sat back down into her original position, unzipped the tent flap to toss the bug out, and wiped her hands clean with a tissue. "We can sleep now," she smiled. Staring at her pure and utterly harmless expression, I stammered awkwardly, "Right, let's sleep, fast," because the tent was quite cramped. That entire night, Chow Roxy remained sitting upright by my side. The next morning, as I went to return the equipment, I noticed that Su Xinyao still hadn't woken up. I shouted out, "Su Xinyao, time to move out." Total silence was the only response. I unzipped her tent only to find the space completely vacant. My heart sank. Just as I was about to search for her, the old man who rented the tents yelled, "Hey kid, someone has collapsed over in that gazebo. I think it might be your friend." I scowled and raced toward the pavilion immediately. There I found Su Xinyao, curled into a tight ball in the corner of the gazebo. It looked like she'd been soaking in the rain all night long. Water was dripping relentlessly from her matted hair, tracing cold paths down her deathly pale face. Her head hung low, her eyelids barely fluttering as she drifted. I approached her with slow, measured steps and crouched before her. "Su Xinyao, let's go home." She cracked her eyes open ever so slightly, droplets of water rolling off her thick lashes. In that moment, it was impossible to tell tears from rain. "Home," she rasped, her voice broken. "Do I even have one? I used to think home was wherever my mother was, but then she abandoned me. Then I thought even though my father was a violent drunk who beat me constantly, at least having him meant I still had a roof over my head. But then he died, and after that, I truly believed home was wherever you were. And now even you've cast me aside. You don't want me anymore." Su Xinyao suddenly lunged, gripping my wrist in a vice. Her eyes were bloodshot and raw. "Guyu, where is my home?" My heart gave a violent, painful twitch. Staring at the pathetic wreck she'd become, I expected to feel a surge of triumph or joy. Instead, her words felt like a heavy stone lodged in my chest, stifling any sense of satisfaction. I sat down on the cold floor beside her. "Do you remember how we used to celebrate?" I asked softly. "Back when we were too poor to afford a real birthday." Su Xinyao turned her hollow gaze toward me. I smiled faintly and held out my empty palm, pretending to cradle a delicate, invisible cake. I carefully placed it onto the gazebo's wooden bench. Then I mimed sticking imaginary candles into the air cake and pretended to strike a match to light them. When we were broke, we used to daydream about finally tasting a real cake. Eventually, Su Xinyao and I made a fortune. Yet we never felt that same spark again. Never again did we celebrate each other's birthdays with such sincerity. I looked at Su Xinyao smiling faintly. Time to make a wish. Su Xinyao stood there completely dazed. I urged her with forced patience. Close your eyes. Su Xinyao slowly let her eyelids flutter shut. Facing that non-existent K, she childishly repeated her deepest desire over and over. Dear heavens, please take every ounce of my future happiness. Just to trade it for a single piece of Guyu's heart. She could sacrifice everything else. The only thing she truly needed was Guyu. Su Xinyao bit her lip, trembling. Suddenly, she heard the soft melody of my voice. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. It felt exactly like that distant, forgotten past. Before the parents, before Zia Huajin, before Peilin, and before Chao Roxy. Before anyone else cluttered our lives, it was just like this. I was singing for her and her alone. Happy birthday to you? Su Xinyao's eyes began to sting and burn with hot tears. She slowly opened her eyes to look at me. Through her blurred, watery vision, she heard my voice cut through the silence. Su Xinyao, this is the final birthday I will ever spend with you. For the sake of every memory we once shared, I am begging you, please just let me go.